Hello guys, I got my new Hyundai Tucson car a couple of months back and I thought I'll share with you my first impressions regarding the car after driving it for just about 1000 kilometers. Most of the highlights of this car are very well covered in the company's brochure as well as many professional videos which are already available on the YouTube. Those highlights, salient features of this remarkable car are plentiful and I'm sure if you do a quick search on the YouTube you'll find so many videos. In this particular video, I'm sharing few quirks and other aspects of this car which I personally think could be done better. In a way, I'm trying to highlight some of the deficiencies of this car which I think they can be done better. By no means I take away the fact that the new Hyundai Tucson is an excellent mid-size luxury SUV in the market. It beats its rivals by leaps and bounds. And I'm sure that these deficiencies will not deter you from not buying this car in case if that is what you are looking for. Please note, I am not a video blogger and I'm not a professional YouTuber, so this is the best quality that I can produce. The points that I'm about to list are the ones that I have personally observed, and in no way it represents a collective insight about the car. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so point number one. Reverse lights. So this is a rather unusual quirk which is very readily seen on the outside design of the rear reverse lights. So in this picture, as you can see, the light on the left side, it has got frosted glass with distinct column patterns versus the light on the right side has a clear glass with rectangular pattern. I hope you are able to appreciate the difference between the two. Now, what's even more interesting is the fact that when you drive the car in reverse, it's only the left side light that lights up. The right side light does not light up. You would expect that when you reverse the car, both the lights would light up, but that does not happen in Hyundai Tucson. I know what you are thinking. Did someone mess this? No. I asked the dealership. Apparently, it's a design choice. I looked at so many cars which are available, and they all have the same design. So I don't think that I got a messed up car. This is a design choice. Why was it done? I have no idea. But this is something which is a very random quirk. And next time when you see a Hyundai Tucson, pay attention to that. Okay, point number two, front headlamps. This to me is not a quirk but a significant issue. Now, as you can see, due to the elaborate DRLs that you all have seen in Hyundai Tucson, it has been advertised, it's excellent, it looks good, but because of this elaborate DRL pattern, the headlamp unit in this car is mounted lower than what you are usually used to seeing. In this particular picture, take example of XUV 700. This you can use it for comparison. So the headlamp position in Tucson is significantly lower when you compare it with XUV 700. You can also appreciate that this headlamp is embedded within the frame of the front bumper. So within the front bumper there is a cutout, and in that cutout you can see that this housing of the headlamp, it sits. Lastly, when you look at the lens of the headlamp in the picture, I hope you are able to appreciate that the lens of the headlamp is a little bit convex outwards. So basically it kind of protrudes out of the plane. This is well appreciated when you see the side profile of the headlamp. Now with all this, it is fair to say that if the car gets any front side impact, it's highly likely that the headlamps will be impacted first along with the bumper, which means even a low intensity impact on the side, it may be enough to break this fragile lens. And as you know, with this new assembly, any damage to the lens will basically prompt you to replace the entire headlamp unit. And this headlamp unit, I have asked the dealership, the headlamp unit in India costs 70,000 in Indian rupees, translating to almost 850 US dollars. Now, even from a US standard, that seems to be a pretty pricey part that you may need to replace, which is located in a very fragile, high impact area. So far, I couldn't come up with a workaround on how to make the headlamp less vulnerable. Where basically this car is forcing me to drive with extreme care so that I do not get any side impact and I do not risk damaging my headlamp. Okay, point number three, approach. So, when this car is locked and when you approach to this car with the key in your pocket, car acknowledges your presence by turning the ORVMs. So the ORVMs, they flip out, and a tiny bulb, it lights up at the handle, which you can appreciate in the video here. But the problem is that the car doesn't auto unlock. You have to press the button on the handle, which is welcomed by a very shrill noise or a horn telling you the car has been unlocked. Now, pressing a button is not an issue whatsoever, but I would have expected that when the car recognizes the approach, then I would have expected the car to auto unlock as well. Okay, point number 4. The two key features which I find missing in this otherwise phenomenal new Hyundai Tucson are the sunglasses holder and the rear sun blinds. Now, top trim of this car in India costs almost 44 lakh rupees, which translates to 53,000 US dollars. At this price point, a user would expect to have these otherwise basic features. For comparison, in India, cars like Kia Sonet, which goes for around 14 lakhs, about a third of this cost, it has both of these features. I wouldn't think that installing these features for a car like this would be that costly of a venture, and particularly for this car, which will be chauffeur driven for a significant portion of the time, these features would have been very well appreciated. So I kind of notice this deficit almost on a daily basis. Okay, point number 5, volume control. So as you can see, just below the infotainment screen, in the cluster where there are all these controls, they are all touch controls. There is no rotary dial that you see in a lot of other cars. It's all touch. The only button control which is readily available to you while driving is the one on the steering. Now the volume range in this car, which is the range that goes up and down when you are changing the volume, the scale goes from 0 all the way to 50 or so, which means that a few clicks on the volume button is unlikely to change the volume significantly. It's unlikely to get the volume where you want. So you always end up pressing the volume button up or down multiple times whenever you wish to change the volume intensity. Now a rotary dial would have made life just so much easier. You just dial up or dial down and the volume would go up. Or you increase the pitch length of the volume, which means that with each increment that the input that you give, the volume should at least increase or decrease by an appreciable value, which in this case that does not happen. Like I would have rather had a volume range in this car from 0 to 20 rather than 0 to 50, because in a range of 0 to 20, every increment change will change the volume by 5% as compared to current where it changes only by about 2% or so. And because there is no rotary dial, you end up pushing the button too many times or sometimes on the touch screen. Now, if you press and hold, then it goes fast enough. But that press and hold input is again too long. Not a big deal, just something that could be refined a little bit better. Number 6, that's the ADAS. Now, you all have heard that the Hyundai Tucson comes with the very high-tech ADAS level 2 features, and they are very good. They do what they're supposed to. But the problem is we are driving this car on Indian roads amongst the Indian traffic. And one particular feature I believe is something which at some point will get me in trouble. And I'm talking about the forward collision assistance. The ADAS itself is great, but the forward collision assistance is too sensitive. And it gets triggered very fast. And once triggered, it slams the brakes very, very hard, which means that it brings the car in an immediate standstill. Now, in a typical Indian traffic, there is an exceedingly higher chance of this ADAS triggering the forward collision warning very few times every time when you drive. And with that, because the car will come on an unexpected halt, this will increase the chance of someone driving at your back hitting your car. That rear ending is something which I fear. And I understand that even when my car gets rear-ended, most likely that won't be because of the mistake of the person driving in the back. It is most likely because my ADAS just hit the brake too hard. As I said, that it is not necessarily because it avoided a collision. It's because it just got too sensitive and it applied brakes much before I would have done. And in India, good luck getting rear-ending compensation, because that is not really the system here. So what I end up doing is every time I start my car, I change the forward collision system to warning only, so that it only warns me. It does not apply an active assistance. The problem is the system resets every time I restart the car. So every time when you restart, you have to go into the menu and you have to disable the forward collision. Point number 7, the wireless charging pad. As you can see in this picture, the gear handle comes in the way to access the wireless charging pad if you are driving, if you're on the driver's seat. So with this, your phone is almost out of sight once you place it there. It's very easy for me to forget my phone when I'm stepping out because that phone is already out of my sight. Thankfully, the car gives you an alert when you open the door while the phone is still at the charging pad. It will give you an alert saying that, hey, did you forget your phone? And that way you won't forget it. But definitely the location is a little bit odd because of that big gear handle that comes on the way. The location doesn't make it easy for quick access, because let's say if you're driving and if you want to quickly access your phone while it is in the charging pad, you'll have to reach out over the gear lever, and then only you'll be able to take it out, which again makes it a little bit more difficult. It forces you to get your eyes off the road for a few seconds, and that definitely cannot be a very safe option. Now, if you look at the versions of Hyundai Tucson which are available in the North American market or in the European market, you will see that this handle has been replaced by buttons, digital buttons for your gear, and that definitely resolves this problem. Point number 8, time display. The gaze cluster of this car, which is digital, it doesn't show time. There is, at least I so far could not figure out if there is a way for me to display time on the gaze cluster. Now, a lot of cars, in fact, majority of cars which I have driven or owned, at least there is one portion in the gaze cluster where the time is seen. In this car, it's not seen. That's okay, not a big problem. The infotainment cluster, it does show the time. But the problem is that depending upon which screen you are on at that point, the location of time and the font of time, it differs. So for example, at the home screen, you will see the time stamped pretty much with the big font right over here. When you have a settings screen, then the time goes over there. When you have your CarPlay or your Android Auto on, then your time is shown somewhere else. What basically it does is that it makes me checking the time on the infotainment screen a tad inconvenient. I can't quickly glance on the screen and check what is the time. I have to kind of glance through, I have to scan through the entire screen to figure out where that time is. A fixed location for time display would have been just so easy. It would have made life so much easy, even if the font was small, even if the font was whatever it is. It would just have made it easier. My eyes would know exactly where to look when I have to look for the time. In this case, it just does not make it easy. Now I'm sure I will get used to it over the period of time. My eyes will train itself. But till that time, I hope I again don't get into an accident kind of situation where I have to take my eyes off the road for maybe those 2-3 extra seconds while I am glancing over the screen to find what is the time. Point number 9, phone call. So this is a little bit more annoying than anything else. So let's say your phone is connected to your car via Bluetooth and you're at the home screen. Now, when you make a phone call to somebody, your home screen does not automatically switch to a calling app or a calling mode. It just stays like this. At the very bottom of the home screen, as you see here, it displays that you are calling somebody. But there is no action button, there is no disconnect button, there is nothing. You have to go into the calling app to get those action buttons. Now, on a routine way, you call somebody picks up, you are chatting, and then somebody disconnects. There, it doesn't really matter. But let's say you call somebody and that person doesn't pick up the phone, or that person's phone is busy or is out of network or whatnot. You can't disconnect the phone. You have to pick up your phone and disconnect it. You can't disconnect it through the screen. If you want to disconnect it through the screen, then you'll have to go into the settings, you have to go to the calling app mode, and there only you can disconnect. But otherwise, you just have to pick up your phone. Now, when you're driving, it can become a little bit tricky for you. Point number 10, USB charging. This car has 4 USB ports, 2 on the front, 2 on the back, but they all are type A. In the modern age of 2022, 2023, cars should have at least one type C port, or maybe all of them should be type C port. Type-C is coming up as a universal system. It is just disheartening to see that car with all the modern tech and everything still has got USB Type-A's only. Number 11, turning radius. The new Hyundai Tucson is 4,630 millimeters long. That is the long wheel version which is available in India, and that is what gives this car its presence on the road and makes it fun to drive. There is plenty of space in the back. With the size though, the turning radius increases. That's expected. But when you compare Hyundai Tucson to its peers, what I personally find that navigating this car across the corners is a little bit more difficult than navigating other cars of similar length or even a longer length. Like for example, the new Innova Hi-Cross, it navigates my multi-level parking with much ease compared to my Tucson. Now the official figures for the turning radius is very difficult to find online. I could get some data from the US versions, but it's very difficult for me to get official figures for Indian version Tucson and compare it with other available cars. Of note, I'm not listing third-party numbers. Point number 12, lane assist speed limit. This car, as a part of ADAS feature, has lane assist lane keep feature. What it means is going beyond a certain speed, if there are lane markings, it will engage those lanes and then it will try to keep you within that lane, which means that if you deviate, then it will give you an alert. And as a part of active assistance, it will try to veer the car back to keep you in the lane. So you would feel that on your steering, where the car will try to steer itself back into the lane. Now you can override it, that's absolutely okay, but the car definitely gives you an alert. My problem is it always engages at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour or higher. Now in Indian roads, particularly amongst the Indian traffic, it is very easy for us at times to reach that 60 kilometers per hour. The problem is with the kind of Indian traffic and with the kind of roads that we are driving, it is very difficult to keep the car on the lane. So every single time when the car crosses 60, then you start getting all these alerts and whatnot. Now, I can very well just disengage this feature. I can disable this feature and I'll be all okay. But I wish there was a user-defined setting where I could change at what speed the lane assist activates. Then I would have very simply changed it to maybe a 75 or 80 kilometers per hour, where I know that the feature is active, but there is a very less chance of this feature getting activated in a routine day-to-day driving on the road, and that I know that this feature will be activated every time I hit the highway, so that I don't have to disable and enable this feature again and again. Number 13, another quirk for this car is auto seat adjustment. The feature in this car is that the driver's seat, it retracts back so that it makes your entry and exit of the car a little bit easier. So it's something like when you are entering into the car, your seat is retracted as far back as possible so that you can enter easily. And the moment you start the car, the seat goes back to its original position where you left it last time, so that your driving is easy. That is pretty good. The problem is that when you are exiting, when you turn the car off, the seat doesn't move. The seat starts retracting only after you open the door. Now you have already opened the door. You're not going to wait there for 5 more seconds or 8 more seconds for the seat to retract completely and then only you exit out. Again, not a big deal, but I wish if the seat would start retracting the moment you turn off the engine. So when you turn off the engine, by the time you gather your phone and all those things, by that time the seat has already come back in its original position, and then the exit would be much easier. So for my use, the seat retraction feature, when I'm entering into the car, it helps me, but when I'm exiting the car, I pretty much just exit at whatever position the seat is. The second issue with the auto seat adjustment relates to seat memory. Now this car has got 2 seat memory function, and you can select at which spot your seat needs to be, and every time when you will hit that memory, then the seat will find its own position. What I find missing in this is the auto seat memory function only adjusts the seat. It does not adjust the ORVM. If somebody else used your car, there is a very good chance that person, if moved your seat, that person would have also moved your ORVM. So when you come back and when you use the memory function, the seat comes back to its original position, but you still have to set the ORVM. Number 14, this is a point which I really like about this car. That is the side stick. If you look at the side sticks on both the sides, I love how the side sticks are designed, how it feels, It has got this kind of crystal kind of structure at the very end. It makes you feel luxurious. And any change that you make on this stick, it is shown on the gauge cluster. So it is much easier for you to see what you are doing. You don't have to really squint and look into the side stick every time what you are doing. You can simply just look at the gauge cluster and it will show you. Point number 15, again something that I like. This car has a trip meter. The gauge cluster, it shows the trip meter and it resets every time when you start a new trip. The cool feature is that it tells you how much time you spent driving that particular trip, what was the distance that was driven, the fuel efficiency, and all of that. It's just a little quirk, a little quirky feature, but it gives you a very good feedback. So every time when I go to work or come back from work, it gives me the information right away that how much time it took me to cover that trip for the day. Okay, point number 16, that is auto air conditioning. Interesting thing about this car is even with the auto AC, it has got 3 levels, as you can see here. So even with the temperature set, even with the auto AC set, you can still change what level of auto AC that you want. So if you don't want, let's say, a heavy blast of air, but you still want a cool cabin, then you can adjust the auto AC level accordingly. So you can keep it at a low level, even in the auto mode, without you manually needing to change the fan speed or whatnot. The system understands that you want a cool cabin, but you want it with less blast of air, and that way it reduces the fan speed. You probably know that this car also has got a diffuse mode, where all the panels on the front, they have these tiny holes through which air comes in a very diffuse state. And if you turn on the diffuse mode, it disables the auto AC. Air kind of diffuses very softly into the cabin. You won't even know that the air conditioning is on, but it will keep your cabin cool. So dear listeners, these were some of the random quirks and issues which I could identify with the car in this just about a month of me driving. Now, none of these deficiencies which I described made me doubt my decision of buying this wonderful car. It's an excellent car, fun to drive. The new Hyundai Tucson is a game changer in its segment. It drives well, it makes you feel special. If I have to make a decision again, I would again buy this car. But these are the small quirks. These are not necessarily game changers, but these are some of the things which I wish when I buy this car next time, some of these features are at least taken care of. Thank you for watching. And as I said, I'm not a professional YouTuber or a video maker. I just did this to share my thoughts with you guys. So in case if you are in the market trying to understand the details about the cars, maybe this will give you some more insight. Take care, guys.